CDC that the issue of equity got addressed by taking funding away from some agencies who had, they would argue, adequate funding to give to agencies that were underfunded. And in prior years, that's always been done with new funding. And so, but since the inception of CDC, there are agencies in areas like Circuit 6 that have been just significantly underfunded, and new funding just didn't even begin to scratch upon the differences across CDC. So for the first time, CDCs had to reduce their funding and give funding to CDCs who were underfunded based on an allocation methodology. It was the first time that CDCs were divided across the state, because about half of them stood to gain and half of them stood to lose. And so it was a very difficult position to be in regardless, because for those agencies that stood to lose, they argued that our funding is adequate. And in order to reduce it, it would mean reducing services for kids. And how do you do that and be okay with that? And for, you know, areas like Circuit 6, where we're about 17 million in a home, we're looking like 2.5 million, which just doesn't even begin to address the real issue of inequity. But our kids have been suffering, and they will continue to suffer until we address this very issue. And so we were successful in getting 2.5 million of equity that replaced about 1.7 million in non-recurring funding that we got last year. So it's just, it's going to be an ongoing area of focus for us, but the issue of inequity across the state of Florida continues to be a topic of discussion that we'll go into. I mean, we're still having to flesh out strategies moving forward, because no one wants to see a CDC be in a position of not knowing how to budget year after year after year, because they're subject to lose additional funding. But at the same time, we have to figure out how it's not fair for a family residing in Pinellas to receive less service than if they were residing in Tampa, because of the funding and how it's allocated. So it's just, we just have to figure out a solution for all of Florida's kids.
Rita, was this a one-time only redistribution, or a rework of the formula overall?
It's intended to be for the next 3 years an additional 25%, which is what's creating a lot of the conflict right now, and it's based on an allocation methodology that not all CDCs believe is a valid one, because part of it, one of the variables has to do with the number of abuse reports called into the hotline. So you have some areas saying, well, we'll just hire people to call reports into the hotline all day long so that we can get our numbers up, and then that way we won't lose our funding. So people just
these are
say,
focus calls,
well, I'm sure they're being facetious when they say it, but they're just saying that's how flawed the methodology is if you base it just on, like, one of the variables will obviously be the number of calls made to the hotline, and people think that shouldn't be a variable, that you need to look at other factors. I can assure you that no CEO in their right mind would actually follow through on that, but that's just how ridiculous some of the conversations have gotten as we try to discuss a better way. So I think what the focus will be moving forward, though, Gay, is how do we do the allocation methodology in a way that makes sense and that people support and believe. And because the one thing that was consistent is that all CDCs agreed